We live in a world that's supposed to be seamless, connected, and, efficient. But what happens when that digital fabric starts to fray? When the systems we all rely on don't just fail, but fail in these bizarre, costly, and sometimes even dangerous ways? Well, there's a growing problem called digital friction, and today we're going to dive right into what that really means.
This quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of it. It comes from a story about this new wave of crime that's all about a complex mix of internet access and physical execution. The lines between the digital and the physical world, they're completely blurring. It's not just about stealing data anymore. It's about using that data to steal actual physical things.
So, first up, let's look at how attackers aren't just getting smarter. They're getting way more strategic. They're thinking like businesses, and they're targeting the weakest links in the systems we trust the most.
Okay, take a look at how this scheme works. It's pretty clever. This isn't some brute force attack. These criminals pose as freight middlemen. They build up trust with trucking companies, and then they use that access to take over their entire online identity. And with that stolen identity, they can hijack truckloads of electronics and even energy drinks. It's a full-scale, business-savvy takeover.
And this right here, this illustrates a massive vulnerability. You might think a giant bank like JP Chase is a digital fortress, and you know what? It is. But its defenses don't really matter if an attacker can just walk in through the unlocked back door of a smaller partner. In this case, hackers hit a firm called Citus AMC, and by doing that, they got their hands on corporate data from some of the biggest names in finance. It just goes to show, you're only as strong as your weakest partner.
This next attack builds on that exact same idea of exploiting trust, but in a way that feels way more personal. Attackers are now using tools we see every day, like Calendly. They send invites that look like they're from brands you know and trust: Disney, Uber, MasterCard. You click, thinking you're just scheduling a meeting, and bang, an advanced pop-up steals your business login. It's a super targeted attack that turns our trust in everyday tools right against us.
But here's the thing, digital friction isn't always caused by some malicious attacker. Sometimes the most spectacular failures come from right inside the house. This section is all about the chaos caused not by hackers, but by sheer incompetence and neglect.
This quote just perfectly captures a feeling I think we can all relate to. That complete frustration when a so-called upgrade is actually a massive, expensive downgrade.
And here is the mansion they paid for. Australia spent over $62 million to update its national weather website. And the result? A confusing mess that was actually less useful than the old one, especially for folks like farmers who really rely on it. It didn't just fail to meet expectations, it was an incredibly expensive and totally avoidable mistake.
So, we go from that massive government failure to a much simpler, almost comical one. A recent Windows update literally made the password icon on the login screen invisible. And Microsoft's official advice, just click on the empty space where you remember the button being. I mean, come on. It's a small bug, for sure, but it's a perfect little example of digital friction in our daily lives.
This one, however, is not comical at all. This timeline shows years of just gross negligence at an edtech company. They were warned about their poor security, but they kept storing sensitive data on 10 million students. We're talking addresses, academic records, health data, all in plain text. This wasn't some sophisticated attack. It was a years-long failure to do the absolute basics, and it compromised the futures of millions of kids.
So, with threats coming from both the outside and the inside, how are governments and regulators trying to get a handle on this? This section looks at the bigger picture, the institutional fight for power in our digital world.
And this brings us to two very different strategies for fighting back. On the left, you've got direct law enforcement action. Europol took down a massive crypto laundering service, hitting criminals right where it hurts. But on the right, you've got a more political approach. EU lawmakers are pushing to ditch Microsoft and other US tech in favor of their own homegrown alternatives, framing it as a matter of independence.
And that whole push for independence is driven by this key concept, digital sovereignty. It's the belief that Europe shouldn't have to depend on US companies for its critical digital infrastructure. It basically reframes everyday software as a crucial geopolitical issue.
All right, let's shift gears to a whole new frontier of governance, artificial intelligence. Researchers have found a shocking new vulnerability. It turns out you can trick some of these big AI models by messing with the grammar of your prompt, not the words themselves. So how you ask can be way more important than what you ask.
And this reveals that our current approach to AI safety is, well, brittle.
We've been so focused on filtering out harmful words and ideas, but this research shows that the very structure of a sentence can be used to bypass those filters. It's a huge blind spot in how we're trying to make these incredibly powerful tools safe.
All of this brings us to the big question: where are we even heading? In our final section, we're going to look at what's next, from new defensive strategies to the ongoing debate about our own privacy.
So instead of trying to build some unbeatable AI fortress, a startup called Frenetic is trying something totally different. Their tech constantly shuffles the network layout, meaning any information an attacker gathers is almost instantly out of date. The goal isn't to outpower the adversary, but to simply exhaust them in a digital shell game.
But while some are building better defenses, our data is being watched in some pretty new ways. This chart shows who has access to footage from Flock, a huge AI-powered surveillance network in the US. Okay, you'd expect to see local police and federal agencies. But what's really surprising is that overseas gig workers are being hired to review and categorize this sensitive footage, which raises some huge questions about privacy, right?
And this whole privacy debate is playing out on our phones every single day. Google Maps is now letting users post reviews with a nickname instead of their real name. It's a trade-off, right? This might encourage more honest feedback, but it also completely changes the nature of accountability in our digital public square.
And that brings us to our final thought, a question posed by security expert Bruce Schneier. Social media promised to give everyone a voice, but it also kind of took away our control. Now, AI is at that very same crossroads. Is it going to be a tool that empowers us all, or will it become a new, powerful lever of control? The choices we make right now are going to decide that future.